Modi walked Sundar Pichai's mother to the front row. It began on a quiet evening in New Delhi, a hall filled with the sharp glow of television lights and the hum of thousands of voices waiting for something extraordinary. The audience included ministers, diplomats, business leaders, students, and families who had traveled across states just to witness history being written. On stage stood the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, preparing to welcome someone who had carried India's name into every corner of the world. But it was not just Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, who became the center of attention that night. It was his mother. The hall fell into a hush when the cameras turned toward an elderly woman seated at the side. She was simple, dressed in a modest sari, her eyes filled with quiet pride and nervous wonder. For years, she had lived far from the spotlight, away from the noise of fame. She had carried groceries from small shops in Madurai, had cooked for her children late into the night, had told them to study even when the lights flickered and the electricity cut out. Her name was Lakshmi Pichai, and that evening she was about to step into a moment that India would never forget. Prime Minister Modi noticed her sitting far away, surrounded by rows of chairs filled with strangers. He paused. His eyes softened, and then, to everyone's surprise, he walked down from the stage, moving straight toward Sundar's mother. People rose to their feet, whispering, wondering what he would do. In a hall full of powerful leaders and world-renowned figures, the Prime Minister extended his hand gently to an ordinary mother. With the humility of a son rather than the authority of a leader, he said, "A mother like you should not be sitting so far behind. Please come with me." And as the cameras captured every second, he walked her slowly, respectfully, to the very front row. The audience gasped. Some even clapped through their tears, because in that simple act, there was something deeper than politics, deeper than technology, deeper than power. It was respect. The moment spread across the hall like fire. People were not just seeing a mother being honored. They were seeing every mother of India being lifted. Every woman who had sacrificed silently for the dreams of her children. Sundar Pichai, who was sitting only a few seats away, could not hide the emotion in his eyes. This was not a corporate event anymore, this was personal, and in that instant, his entire journey began to flash before him. The narrow streets of Chennai where he once ran barefoot, the small one-room apartment where his family shared meals, the old black rotary phone that became his first window into technology, and the sacrifices his parents made, day after day without complaint. As the hall applauded, Sundar remembered how his father, an engineer at a factory, saved money for years just to buy him a ticket to America so he could pursue his studies at Stanford. He remembered how his mother encouraged him when he doubted himself, when he felt he was just another boy from India who could never compete with the brightest minds in Silicon Valley. And he remembered the endless nights of work, the rejections, the failures, the times when he thought of giving up but did not because he wanted to make them proud. Yet that night was not just about nostalgia, it was about what was about to come. For the people in the hall thought they were watching a simple ceremony, but no one knew that this moment would trigger a chain of events that would shake India, move its people to tears, and leave the world speechless. As Sundar rose from his seat and gently touched his mother's feet in front of the Prime Minister, a silence swept through the room. It was not rehearsed, it was not scripted, it was raw. And then, the questions began to echo in everyone's mind. Why had the Prime Minister chosen this exact moment to honor Sundar's mother? Was it just respect, or was there something more? Was there a message hidden in that walk? A message for Sundar? For his mother? For India? Whispers started rising in the crowd. Some believed it was a symbolic gesture, a reminder that India's strength comes from its families, its roots, its mothers who build futures without ever asking for recognition. Others said there was a deeper story, that behind this act lay a secret that would only reveal itself in the days to come. And Sundar, though grateful, could not shake off a strange feeling. He knew his journey had been hard, but he also knew that nothing in his life had ever been this simple. Life had always tested him with unexpected turns, and he felt in his heart that something bigger was waiting just beyond that applause, something he was not prepared for. As the crowd continued clapping and cameras flashed endlessly, PM Modi leaned toward Lakshmi Pichai and whispered something only she could hear. Her eyes widened, her hands trembled, and for a brief second her smile faded into a look of shock. Sundar noticed it, but before he could ask, the Prime Minister straightened up and walked back to the stage, leaving behind only silence and questions. Lakshmi sat quietly in the front row, her face now carrying an expression that no one could understand. It was pride mixed with fear, joy tangled with something unspoken. Sundar looked at her, searching for answers, but she avoided his gaze. She had carried secrets before, as every mother does, but this one felt heavier than all the rest. The night that began with applause was ending with mystery. India was watching. The world was watching. And Sundar Pichai was left wondering what truth was hidden in that whisper, and why his mother's eyes carried tears that did not fall. The story was only beginning. The whisper that shook Sundar Pichai. The applause was still echoing in the grand hall. Yet for Sundar Pichai, time felt as if it had slowed to a crawl. He watched his mother carefully, every small movement of her hands, every flicker of her eyes. Lakshmi Pichai was not a woman who easily showed her emotions. She had lived through the hardships of raising two sons in a small Indian home where every rupee was counted and every sacrifice hidden behind a quiet smile. But now, sitting in the front row of a hall filled with the most powerful people in the nation, her expression betrayed something she could not hide. It was as if the Prime Minister's whisper had stirred a memory, something buried deep in her past, something she had never spoken of. Sundar tried to focus on the words being spoken on stage, the speeches about India's digital future, the promise of technology, the pride of seeing a boy from Madurai rise to lead one of the world's largest companies. But his heart was not on the stage. It was on his mother's trembling hands, the way she clutched the edge of her sari as if holding on to something unseen. He leaned toward her and whispered, "Amma, what did he say to you?" His voice was soft, careful, but her reaction was firm. She turned her head away, eyes fixed on the stage, pretending not to hear. For the first time in years, Sundar felt distance between them, a wall that had not been there before. The event ended with the usual flashes of cameras, handshakes, and warm smiles. People rushed toward Sundar, eager for a word, a photo, a handshake that might one day become a story to tell their children. He smiled politely, answered questions, but his mind never left the image of his mother's face when she heard the whisper. He wanted to ask again, but something in her silence told him that now was not the right time. Later that evening, after the crowd had gone and the stage lights had dimmed, Sundar and his mother sat together in the car. The night air of Delhi pressed against the windows, heavy and restless. Finally, Sundar asked again, his voice filled with both love and unease, "Amma, please tell me, what did the Prime Minister say?" Lakshmi did not answer immediately. She closed her eyes, as if weighing her words against the burden of years. Then she opened them and looked straight at her son. "Sundar," she said slowly, "there are things in life that even a mother cannot explain in a single moment. Sometimes truths wait for the right time to be spoken. Tonight is not that time." Her words were gentle, but they cut into Sundar's heart. He had built his life on knowledge, on facts, on clarity of thought. Uncertainty was the one thing he had always struggled with, and now it was coming from the person he trusted most. As they drove through the city, Sundar looked out at the glowing lights of Delhi, the busy streets, the families walking together, the young children running barefoot on sidewalks, the vendors calling out to customers. He saw his own childhood in their faces. He remembered being that boy who ran down narrow streets in Chennai, whose parents saved every coin to give him a chance at education, whose dreams seemed too big for the walls of his small home, and he realized that his mother had always been his guide, his light in the dark. But tonight she was holding something back, and that silence felt heavier than anything he had carried before. The next morning, news channels across India were filled with the image of PM Modi guiding Lakshmi Pichai to the front row. Commentators called it a symbol of respect, a tribute to mothers of India, a moment of humility in politics. Social media overflowed with admiration, with people saying it reminded them of their own mothers and the sacrifices they had endured. But amid the praise, rumors began to spread. Some said the Prime Minister had whispered something important to Sundar's mother, something that explained her sudden change of expression. No one knew the truth, and that mystery only fueled curiosity. For Sundar, the whispers of the world mattered less than the silence in his own home. He returned with his mother to their modest family house, where memories lived in every corner. The smell of old wooden furniture, the faded photographs on the walls, the sound of distant temple bells, all of it brought him comfort, yet also reminded him that there were years of his mother's life he did not fully understand. One evening, as they sat together in the courtyard, Sundar tried once more. "Amma," he said gently, "you taught me that honesty is the greatest gift a parent can give a child. If there is something I need to know, please, do not hide it." His mother looked at him, her eyes soft, yet firm. "My son, you will know when the time comes. Until then, trust me as you always have." Her words ended the conversation, but they did not end the questions in Sundar's heart. He lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of an unseen truth pressing down on him. Days passed, filled with meetings, interviews, and endless responsibilities that came with leading Google. Yet no matter how far he traveled, the image of his mother's shocked face returned to him again and again. He wondered if the whisper was connected to his family's past, to some choice his parents had made, to something he had overlooked in his journey. Then, one evening, a letter arrived at his family's home. It carried no sender's name, only his mother's name written in shaky handwriting. Lakshmi opened it with trembling hands, read a few lines, and quickly folded it again, her face pale. Sundar reached for it, but she pulled it close to her chest. "This is not for you," she said firmly, her voice breaking. But Sundar had seen enough. Just a single line before she closed it. It read, "The time has come. He deserves to know." His heart pounded. Who had sent the letter? What secret did his mother carry that even the Prime Minister seemed to know? And why was it written as if his life was about to change forever? That night, Sundar stood by the window, the cool air of Chennai brushing against his face, and he realized something undeniable. His mother was protecting him from a truth that could no longer remain hidden. But what was it, and why now? The letter that could not be hidden. The night was heavy with silence. Sundar stood by the window of his childhood home, watching the narrow lane outside fade into the darkness. The dim glow of a street lamp flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. In his mind, the words from the letter repeated again and again, "The time has come. He deserves to know." He could not escape them. They burned into his thoughts, louder than the sound of the crickets, sharper than the restless hum of the city in the distance. He turned toward his mother, who sat in the corner of the room, holding the folded letter tightly in her hands. Her fingers trembled slightly as she kept it close to her chest, as if afraid it might slip away. Sundar's heart ached at the sight. This was the same woman who had faced life's hardships with unshakable strength, who had never let tears fall in front of her children, who had carried the weight of the family with silent dignity. And yet, tonight, she looked fragile, like someone carrying a burden too heavy to be spoken aloud. Sundar walked slowly toward her, his voice calm but insistent. "Amma, please, whatever this is, I need to know. I cannot carry on like this, seeing you suffer and not understanding why. I am not a child anymore. I can bear the truth." Lakshmi's eyes lifted toward him, shimmering with unshed tears. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came. Instead, she shook her head, pressing the letter tighter to her chest. "Not tonight," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Not yet." Her refusal cut deep into Sundar's heart. He had faced challenges in boardrooms, negotiated with some of the sharpest minds in the world, endured criticism and doubt, but nothing felt as difficult as this, standing before his own mother and realizing she did not trust him enough to share the truth. The next morning, He woke to the sound of temple bells echoing in the distance. The smell of fresh jasmine, flowers drifted through the courtyard. But instead of peace, there was tension in the air. Lakshmi was quiet, moving through the house like a shadow. She cooked breakfast, spoke little, and avoided her son's searching eyes. Sundar could not stand the silence anymore. He went to his father's old study, a small room filled with dusty books, yellowed papers, and the faint smell of ink. His father, Raghunatha Pichai, had been a man of science, practical and disciplined yet gentle at heart. Sundar often remembered sitting in that very room as a boy, listening to his father explain how circuits worked, how machines came alive through design and logic. If his father had been alive today, Sundar believed he would have given him answers without hesitation. He sat at the desk, running his fingers over the worn wood, and wondered if his father had known about this secret too. The thought filled him with unease. Had his whole life been built on truths left untold? Had every success, every moment of pride been standing on a foundation that could crumble with just one revelation? That afternoon, while his mother rested, Sundar searched the drawers of the old desk. He felt guilty, but his desperation was stronger than his hesitation. He found old receipts, notebooks filled with circuit diagrams, a collection of photographs from family trips. And then, tucked inside a faded envelope, he found something unexpected. A second letter. The paper was fragile, its edges worn with time. The handwriting was neat but slightly faded, and though it was unsigned, Sundar recognized the style immediately. It was his father's handwriting. His hands trembled as he unfolded it, his breath caught in his chest. The letter read, "My dearest Lakshmi, if ever the day comes when Sundar must know the truth, promise me you will tell him with courage. He deserves to understand where he comes from and why his journey was never meant to be ordinary. There are things we kept from him, not out of shame but out of love, out of fear of what it might do to him. But destiny has its own way of calling, and when the time comes we cannot stand in its way." Sundar's eyes widened. His heart pounded. His father had written this years ago, perhaps knowing one day the truth would reach him. But what truth? What destiny? He rushed to his mother with the letter in hand. "Amma," he said, his voice breaking, "I found this in Appa's study. You cannot hide this from me anymore. What is it? What is this truth that everyone seems to know except me?" Lakshmi froze. For a long time she said nothing, staring at the letter as if seeing a ghost. Her lips trembled, and finally she spoke with a voice so heavy that every word felt like a stone. "Your father believed that your life was touched by something greater than chance. There are things about our family, about your birth, about choices we made that you have never been told. The Prime Minister reminded me of it that night. The letter you saw was not a mistake. It was a signal that the time has come." Her words sent a chill through Sundar's body. His birth, his family. What could possibly be so important that even the Prime Minister of India was involved? "Amma, tell me everything," he pleaded, his voice rising with both fear and hope. She looked at him, her eyes filled with sorrow and love, and said, "Sundar, the truth is not just about you. It is about India. And once you know, nothing will ever be the same again." Before Sundar could ask more, there was a knock at the door. It was firm, deliberate, the kind of knock that demanded attention. Lakshmi's face turned pale. She rose quickly, almost stumbling, and whispered to her son, "Do not open it. Please let me handle this." Sundar stood frozen, his heart racing, as the knock came again, louder this time. Who was at the door, and were they here because of the secret his mother was about to reveal? The stranger at the door, the knock echoed again through the small house, louder this time, sharp against the stillness of the night. Sundar felt his chest tighten. His mother's words still lingered in the air. "The truth is not just about you. It is about India." He had barely begun to process them, and now someone was outside, demanding entry. His instincts told him that whatever waited behind that door was connected to the mystery that had haunted his mother. Since the evening of the Prime Minister's whisper, Lakshmi moved quickly, her bare feet silent against the cool floor. She straightened her sari, wiped the tears from her face and stood before the door. Her hands hesitated at the latch, trembling not from weakness, but from fear. Sundar, unable to restrain himself, stepped beside her. "Amma," he whispered, urgently, "please let me open it. Whoever it is, I should face them with you." She turned to him, her eyes pleading. "No, my son. There are things you are not ready to face yet. Let me protect you for a little longer." But before Sundar could argue, the knock came a third time, this one so forceful that the wooden frame shuddered. There was no more time for hesitation. Sundar reached forward and pulled the door open. Standing in the doorway was an elderly man, tall and thin, his hair silver and neatly combed, his eyes sharp yet tired, as if they carried the weight of many sleepless nights. He wore a simple white kurta, but there was something about his posture, his quiet authority, that made Sundar feel as though this man was no ordinary visitor. The stranger's gaze shifted immediately to Lakshmi. For a moment the two simply stared at each other, as though words were unnecessary, as though they had shared a language of silence long ago. Finally, the man spoke, his voice calm but heavy, with purpose. "Lakshmi, the time has come. You cannot keep it from him any longer." Sundar's pulse quickened. This was the second time in as many days he had heard those exact words. The time has come. He stepped forward, demanding, "Who are you? What is this truth everyone speaks of? Why is my life suddenly surrounded by secrets?" The man looked at him with eyes that seemed to pierce straight into his soul. "Sundar," he said softly, "you do not know me, but I have known of you since the day you were born. Your journey was never meant to be ordinary. Your parents made choices long ago that tied your destiny to the future of this country." Sundar's hands clenched at his sides. His whole life had been built on hard work, discipline, resilience, and the quiet sacrifices of his parents. He had never once thought of destiny, of hidden truths or great secrets. And yet, here he stood, with his mother silent and this stranger, speaking in riddles. "Enough," Sundar said firmly. "I am no longer a child who can be protected with silence. Tell me clearly, what is it you think I must know?" The man's expression softened, but he shook his head slightly. "It is not for me to tell. The truth must come from your mother. I am only here to remind her of her promise." Lakshmi's eyes filled with tears as she turned away, unable to meet her son's gaze. Sundar felt his frustration rise, but he also saw the pain in her face. She was not withholding out of cruelty. She was withholding out of fear. The stranger stepped inside, lowering his voice. "Lakshmi, if you do not speak now, others will, and they may not tell it with love. You know as well as I do that forces are moving, and Sundar must be ready. He cannot lead the world without first knowing the truth of where he comes from." His words sent a chill down Sundar's spine. Forces are moving. What did that mean? The stranger placed a small envelope on the table and looked at Sundar once more. "When the time is right, open this. But remember, truth is not a burden. It is a torch. And once it is lit, it cannot be put out." With that, he bowed slightly to Lakshmi and walked out into the night, his figure fading into the shadows of the narrow lane. Sundar picked up the envelope immediately, but his mother snatched it from his hands. "Not yet," she said firmly, her voice shaking. "You are not ready." Anger surged through him, but beneath the anger was fear. Fear of what was inside, fear of what it might do to his carefully built world. For years he had believed his story was simple. A boy from a humble home who worked hard, who rose through perseverance and brilliance to lead Google. But now, that story seemed incomplete, as if it was only the surface of something much larger. That night, he could not sleep. He sat awake in the courtyard, staring at the stars above, wondering what destiny could possibly tie him not just to his family, but to India itself. Questions raced through his mind. Had his father known the Prime Minister? Was there a hidden connection between his family and the nation's leaders? And what could possibly be so great a truth that even strangers came knocking in the night to insist he hear it? As dawn broke, He found his mother sitting by the puja corner, her hands folded in prayer, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. Sundar sat beside her, his voice trembling. "Amma, please, if you love me, do not hide this from me any longer." She turned to him, her face pale but determined. "Sundar, there is something you must understand. Your story is not just yours. Your father and I made choices long ago that changed everything. And now the past is coming back. You deserve to know, but once you do, you can never go back to the life you knew." She reached for the envelope, held it tightly for a moment, and then pressed it into his hands. "Read it, my son, but know that it will change everything you believe about who you are." Sundar felt his throat tighten as he looked at the envelope, the paper thin and fragile, yet carrying a weight that could alter his very identity. His hand shook as he began to open it, his heart pounding with the fear of what truths it might reveal. And then, just as he unfolded the paper, his phone rang sharply, breaking the silence. The screen flashed with a name he did not expect, the office of the Prime Minister. The call that could not be ignored. The phone's vibration rattled against the wooden table, its sound breaking through the heavy silence of the house. Sundar froze, the thin envelope still resting in his trembling hands, its seal half broken, the truth inside waiting to be revealed. His eyes shifted from the fragile paper to the glowing screen, where the words "Office of the Prime Minister" burned brightly. He felt torn in two directions. One path led into the past, into the words his father had left behind, into the mystery his mother had guarded with her silence. The other path led into the present, into the voice of India's leader, a man who already seemed to know more than Sundar himself. He hesitated, his heartbeat echoing louder than the ring. His mother reached out suddenly, her hand pressing down on his. "Answer it," she whispered. "This call is part of what I feared. The timing is no accident." With a breath that felt too heavy for his chest, Sundar slid his finger across the screen and pressed the phone to his ear. The line crackled for a moment before a firm voice spoke. "Mr. Pichai, this is the office of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister requests your presence at his residence. It is urgent. A car will be sent immediately." Before Sundar could reply, the call ended, leaving him in stunned silence. He stared at the phone, then at his mother. Her face was pale, her lips pressed together as though she already knew what was coming. "Amma," he said, his voice shaking. "What is happening? Why does the Prime Minister want to see me now? Does this have to do with the secret you've been hiding from me?" Lakshmi's eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing. Instead, she placed her hand gently over the envelope, closing it again. "Take this with you," she said softly. "But do not open it yet. You must hear from him first. Only then will the letter make sense." Sundar wanted to protest, to demand the truth immediately, but something in her voice and the quiet strength of her eyes stopped him. He nodded silently, slipping the envelope into his jacket pocket, its weight pressing against his heart. Within the hour, a black car arrived at the gate. The streets of Chennai were alive with their usual noise. Children running barefoot, vendors calling out, the smell of fried snacks drifting in the air. But for Sundar, everything felt distant, muted, as though the world around him had dimmed. He sat in the car, the windows tinted, the city rushing past in blurs of light and shadow. As the car sped through the night, his thoughts twisted like tangled threads. Why had the Prime Minister whispered to his mother? Why had a stranger appeared at their door with warnings about destiny? What truth lay hidden in the letter still unopened in his pocket? The car finally slowed as it approached the Prime Minister's residence. The gates opened, guards saluted, and Sundar was escorted inside with a formality that felt more like ceremony than routine. He walked through long corridors lined with photographs of India's leaders, his footsteps echoing on the polished floor, and then at last he entered a quiet room where Prime Minister Modi sat waiting. The Prime Minister rose to greet him, his expression calm yet solemn. He motioned for Sundar to sit. "I am glad you came," he said, his voice steady but carrying a weight that suggested this meeting was unlike any other. Sundar sat down, his hands tightening around the envelope in his pocket. "Sir," he began, I need to understand what is happening. My mother has been keeping something from me, something important. You whispered to her that night, and since then, nothing has been the same. Please tell me the truth. Modi studied him for a long moment before speaking. Sundar, you are admired across the world. People see your success as a story of resilience, intelligence, and humility, and all of that is true. But there is more. You are not just the son of Lakshmi and Raghunatha Pichai. Your life is tied to a decision made decades ago, one that was meant to stay hidden until the right time. But that time has come. Sundar felt his stomach tighten. The words mirrored those of the stranger at the door, the same haunting phrase that appeared in his father's letter. What decision? He asked, his voice unsteady. The Prime Minister leaned forward, his eyes intense. Your father was part of a group of engineers who worked on a project that was never spoken of publicly. It was not just about machines or circuits. It was about India's future. Your family was chosen to safeguard something, and now it is you who must decide what comes next. Sundar's mind reeled. His father, a man he remembered as quiet, gentle, devoted to his work. What could he have been part of that connected so deeply to the future of the nation? He struggled to speak. Sir, I do not understand. My father was an engineer at a factory. What could he possibly have safeguarded? Modi's voice grew softer, almost like a whisper. He safeguarded knowledge, knowledge that could change the path of a nation, and he passed that responsibility to your mother. But the truth must now pass to you. Before Sundar could ask more, the Prime Minister nodded toward the envelope in his pocket. You already carry the first key. Read it carefully. Then come back to me, only then can I tell you everything. Sundar's hands shook as he touched the envelope still unopened. Why me? He asked, his voice breaking. Why must it be me? The Prime Minister's gaze did not waver. Because, Sundar, sometimes destiny does not ask, it calls. The room fell silent. Sundar felt the air grow heavier, his heart pounding in his chest. The envelope seemed to burn against his side, demanding to be opened. But before he could reach for it, an aide rushed into the room, whispering urgently into the Prime Minister's ear. Modi's face darkened, his calm expression replaced with one of urgency. He turned back to Sundar. We do not have much time, he said firmly. Those who should not know the truth are already moving. You must read that letter tonight, and be prepared, because once you do, nothing will ever be the same. Sundar stared at him, the world spinning around him. Outside, the night seemed darker than before, as though the stars themselves were holding their breath. And in that moment, he realized his life was no longer his own. The truth inside the envelope. The car ride back from the Prime Minister's residence felt endless. Sundar sat in silence, staring out the window, his thoughts a storm of questions. The Prime Minister's words echoed inside him. Your father safeguarded knowledge. You already carry the first key. Destiny does not ask, it calls. Each phrase struck like thunder in his mind, and then there was the envelope still unopened, pressing against his chest like a heartbeat that was not his own. When he reached home, his mother was waiting at the doorway. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from tears, but her voice was steady. Did he tell you? She asked softly. Not everything, Sundar replied, pulling the envelope from his pocket. He said the truth lies in here. For a long moment, Lakshmi stared at the paper in her son's hand. Then she nodded slowly. Yes. Your father wrote it for you, knowing one day the time would come. I have carried it all these years, hoping the day would never arrive. But fate has its own plan. Tonight, my son, you must read it. They sat together in the courtyard, the night air cool. The stars scattered above like distant witnesses to a moment too heavy for words. Sundar's fingers trembled as he broke the fragile seal and unfolded the letter. The paper was thin. The ink slightly faded, but the words were clear, written in his father's careful handwriting. My son, if you are reading this, it means the day has come when silence is no longer protection. You have lived believing your journey was born from hard work alone, and that is true. But there is more. Decades ago, I was part of a group of engineers entrusted with something extraordinary. We were tasked with creating a system, not of machines, but of minds. We believed India's greatest power was not in weapons but in knowledge, in the ability to connect people, to build bridges of understanding through technology. We discovered a way to design frameworks that could one day evolve into something far greater, a digital future for India, long before the world even imagined it. But such knowledge was dangerous in the wrong hands. So we hid it, dividing the pieces among those we trusted. I was given the responsibility to guard the core of it. And though I never told you, Sundar, from the day you were born, I felt you were meant to carry it forward. You were curious about every detail of the world, every machine, every idea. You had the gift to not just build, but to dream. I knew then, destiny had chosen you. Your mother and I shielded you, letting you live a simple life because we wanted you to grow through humility, not arrogance. We wanted you to know the value of struggle before you carried the weight of knowledge that could shape nations. And now, if this letter has reached you, it means the moment has arrived. Remember this, my son. The work we began was never about power. It was about service. It was about giving people the tools to rise, to connect, to dream. Guard this truth with your life, for there are those who would twist it into something dark. But if you remain humble, if you remain kind, you will guide it to light. The letter ended with a line that made Sundar's throat tighten, tears blurring his vision. I may not be with you when you read this, but know this. I have always believed in you. And so does India. Sundar lowered the paper slowly, his hands trembling. The courtyard was silent except for the faint rustle of leaves in the night breeze. His mother watched him, her eyes filled with both sorrow and pride. So it is true, Sundar whispered. Appa believed I was meant for something greater. And now the Prime Minister, he expects me to carry it. Lakshmi reached for his hand, her touch warm and steady. Your father saw in you what the world sees now, not just brilliance but humility. It is not the knowledge itself that matters, Sundar. It is the heart of the one who carries it. That is why it must be you. For a long while, Sundar sat in silence, the weight of the letter pressing down on him. He thought of his childhood in Chennai, the narrow streets, the broken fan blades his father taught him to fix, the nights his mother stayed awake sewing, clothes to pay for school fees, the sacrifices that had built the foundation of his life. He thought of the stage in Delhi, of the Prime Minister guiding his mother to the front row, of the whispers and warnings and secrets that now made sense. It was overwhelming, yet in the chaos of his thoughts one truth shone clear. This was not about him alone. It was about every boy and girl in India who dreamed beyond their circumstances, about every mother and father who sacrificed in silence, about a nation whose strength was not in wealth or weapons, but in its people's will to rise. Sundar folded the letter carefully, holding it close to his chest. Amma, he said softly, I don't know if I am ready, but I know I cannot run from this. His mother smiled through her tears. Readiness is not the measure, my son. Love is, and you have always led with love. Just then, his phone buzzed again. It was another message from the Prime Minister's office. The nation is waiting. The decision is yours. Sundar looked up at the night sky, the stars shimmering above him. For the first time in his life, he felt the weight of a destiny far greater than himself, and with a deep breath, he whispered into the night, Appa, Amma, I will not let you down. The story had reached its truth, but the journey was only beginning.